And start broadcast. Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening. My name is Frank Buxel, and we're covering the last objective of the VCP-NV today in this vBrownbag. With us is Paul McSharry. I think you already presented on one of the objectives, right, Paul?
That's right, yeah. Well, this is my second one now.
Yeah, one of the earlier ones. So
It was, yeah.
If you have any questions, either use the Q&A field, raise your hand, or just drop the question on Twitter using the vBrownbag hashtag. And with that, over to you, Paul.
Excellent, thanks very much. Hi guys, how are we doing? Welcome to the Brownbag Objective 6 for the VCP-NV. So I've hobbled together some slides, and I'm currently sitting in a hotel running this off my iPhone on 4G. So hopefully this will work quite well. So I've been traveling around today. So my name's Paul McSharry. I'm a freelance contractor from the UK. I'm a V expert since 2012, VCI, a couple of VCAPs, and more recently I've been playing about with the wonderful thing called NSX. So I've been teaching the NSX ICM courses for a few months, and personally I'm looking at the VCIX at the moment, so I'm currently, I've got it booked. I'm just prepping for that at the moment. So I recently took the VCP-NV, and I'm going to try and incorporate some of my experience from my exam in the presentation. So the overview for my next 40 minutes or so is just to have a chat around the objective, which is pretty much all about the NSX Edge. So if people have got experience in vCloud Suite or VCNS, it is a similar type of use case, and we're going to go through all the Edge Gateway features, some useful links along the way, and a few little bits and walkthroughs I've recorded as we go through. So the NSX Edge, it's a VM. So we go through on our NSX journey. We have our NSX Manager, which is our management plane, and then we go through to our controllers, which program our VIBs. So the NSX Edge is a VM. It's the Edge Services Gateway. It's made to be a north-south type firewall. It's virtual aware, but it's got its own separate control plane to that of the control cluster. So it's not part of that controller slicing feature that does the MAC-ARP and VTEP tables for the VXLAN. Its main use case is to add network services to our applications, allow us to break out from from VXLAN to VLAN, and then also allow flexibility for our applications. So it's a nice little suite of network services. So it's like a little bit of a toolkit within a toolkit of NSX. And the VM actually exists in the workload data plane. So the actual workloads that you use and you place within your logical networks, once you connect them, it is actually going through this VM. So there's features such as the 8-day configuration to mitigate any reliance on a single instance of a VM. So in my little crude drawing, we've got our NSX Manager on the right-hand side, which is our management plane. NSX Manager is also the RESTful API endpoint, which is allowing for consumers to program the NSX Edge. So the NSX Edge can actually be programmed as an object. It's created as a virtual appliance, and we can configure our services that we go through completely from our components. So we've got NSX Manager as our management plane, like a separate control plane, and the actual data that you actually use to make money for your workloads pass through our Edge device, which is sitting on a host. So to install it, we've got a nice little demo, well, walkthrough rather than a demos, and you log in to your web client, go to NSX Edges, and you've got two choices. You've got your distributed router or your perimeter gateway. So here we're going to make an Edge Services gateway. I've called everything here vBrownbag along the way. Give it a name, give it a host name, and we can talk about this a bit later on, but with multi-tenancy, give it a username and admin password. That is then placed inside the OVF and pushed out, which we'll see a bit later on. Enable your SSH access and auto rule generation. So we've got a lot of services we're going to talk about. We've got a firewall service, a VPN service, network load balancing, DHCP and DNS relay, NAT, various VPNs and things along the way. They are all services. So when you create the service, when you turn the service on, you can have auto rule generation, which will allow rules to be made automatically. So here we've got next. I use this. I've made this a lab using a Handson Lab, so you might be familiar with it. Deploy your edge. Say where you want to place it, so you can select a cluster and a data store where you're going to place it. So this is really filling in the blanks to automate your OVF deployment of your NSX virtual appliance for your edge. Configure the interfaces. So this can go from internal to uplink. So uplink being a physical connection. Internal, you can select logical switches, standard port groups or distributed port groups. Here I'm selecting an uplink. And I'm going to create some, attaching some logical networks to it. You then configure your subnet and your IP rate and your IP addresses are connecting to it. So here I've got an IP and then a subnet mask, so /24 on here. So I'm gradually building this up to a virtual machine with a couple of NICs, a VNIC, and an interface out to a port group. And I can branch between my physical network of my VLAN and my logical networks, which are within my VXLAN. Now click OK. Go through, configure the rest of my interfaces. And then click OK. Click my default gateway address, again configuring my platform, and then just for example here, I've enabled my default policy to say accept, so I can show a couple of demos a bit later on, but we're going to have it accepted here. Click finish, and if you go into the web to the thick client on the same platform, you can see it being created underneath. So that's one thing I'd recommend when you're playing about with NSX, is it's all in the web client. Drop back into the same platform and you can see the tasks going on. So here we've got my OVF template, which I've just gone through my GUI, which is filled in all the blanks, and created my VM, which is here. So this VM, this is a specific appliance. It's going to give us our services that we're going to talk about, which is all the part in Objective-C. So here you can see it's one virtual CPU, 5 GB of RAM, and we'll talk about the different form factors shortly. So here you can see my VM starting up. Log in using the CLI information that I configured in my OVF, if I can type correctly and things. And then you can do some show commands. So there's a separate CLI guide for the configuration of this. So you've got some show commands. You can't really configure much within it, but you can SSH in and then do some show commands and see what's going on within the platform. So as a recommendation for the exam, just review those commands, and then just do a show configuration, and you can see what's actually being configured. Show system logs, show NAT packets, what's the running processes, what's the stats for the connections, what's the run time. It's a nice little example of how you can configure it. So then once we've actually made our NSX Edge, we can start talking about our services. So there's a few use cases that we talk about. So the NSX Edge has been around for a while. It's proven technology. So I know in my previous roles, I had one particular client that was a lockdown area. So if I just put a little whiteboard up, they had a lockdown platform cut off from the outside world. They used to collect data and place it on some apps. Then they would work 24 hours a day in different shifts, analyzing that data and then allowing people to connect by copying it manually into a platform to allow people to review the data that they just analyzed. So quite labor intensive, and from a technology point of view, it may have been secure because no one can get in, but it was quite a constraint for their users. So by using VCMS, or a very similar platform to the NSX Edge, you can start enabling systems to say you can have a site-to-site VPN to a cloud provider and move things from one site to the other. Have our web tier, my web, my app, and my DB in front of an edge device for load balancing. So pretty much as soon as the edge device was approved for use where I was working, it went from here to allowing to use the edge. And essentially I threw a party from my point of view, because it made me extremely happy that I could use pretty much any service I want here. So you had VPN, DNS and DHCP relay. You got SSL VPN to dial in, NAT, load balancing, and so on. So by enabling this small device here, the flexibility of it, I think that's the essence. That's the use case for this. It's how flexible this device can actually be and the impact it can have to your applications. So the NSX Edge provides network services to applications. And for this objective in the exam, you may or may not see questions which will be aiming at what's the most appropriate feature to use. What should I be using? What's the most appropriate feature to deploy and help my users connect to their applications? So NSX can enable you to make everything an object, automate it, but then you still got to let your users come in, and the NSX Edge provides those features. So we've got a couple of little whiteboards that I've drawn up here which shows the features of the NSX Edge that we're going to talk about and are around Objective 6. So you've got NSX Edge. It's an appliance. There's different form factors, starting off with 512 meg of RAM. So as I talk about these features, you may think, what size of VM I need? And there's a nice little white paper that goes to this. It talks about how many connections and what device and what feature you need, and what size and what form factor you should deploy. So NSX Edge deploys, like we did in the previous little demo. We've got our users, and we've got some application servers. So we've got our web servers. So you can configure load balancing directly from the NSX Edge. Load balance between them, so there's round robin, there's variable ones, which gives you immediate availability across it, just to distribute load. It's got session persistence for sticky sessions. If you log on as this was a shopping site, you would know about it if you bounce between servers. So it's got that session persistence to mean you retain your basket. It's got HA availability in here. It's got health checking. It checks each of the web servers if it's actually connecting and allowing connections. So you can distribute services like HTTP, HTTPS. And there's a couple of modes we'll talk about. There's one-arm mode and inline mode, so one-arm, two-arm mode, which we'll talk about shortly. Another use case is site-to-site VPN. So I have my lockdown area with my NSX Edge. I've got my headquarters and my branch office connected by the World Wide Web or the internet and we've got my edge device at my branch site. And I can connect these two together. It doesn't always have to be an NSX Edge. You could use something else. There's interoperability with things like Checkpoint and Juniper. But I've used pfSense and various other places as well. So we've got edge device to edge device, headquarters to branch, and you can connect them together. You enable a service, configure the system, have a server and client relationship, and you can either have a layer 2 VPN where you can stretch the logical network or the network between them so both sites have the same network ID, or you can have an IPsec VPN up to 10 sites, 64 tunnels, and you can have 2 different subnets. So you can connect the system together. So from your user's perspective, for example, with a user, they can have their applications, their hotboxes here, and you could have different cloud platforms or different sites, all with an edge device connecting in here, and pretty much they wouldn't be aware of where their actual data is being run from. So as long as you look after the security side of things with your pen testing and your vulnerability scanning, you've got the ability to go to the most appropriate place for your workload for either the time frame, the security policy, or the cost, for example. Or maybe another use case is to have 2 different clients within the same cloud provider, can then bridge together like this and talk to each other and link them together for a time, and then you can remove them. Other use case with the VPN is maybe you're moving an application in. So your site-to-site VPN could be layer 2. You've got a few web servers together. You want to migrate them into a cloud provider and you want to do some sort of onboarding. You could temporarily set up an edge-to-edge connection, migrate your VMs one by one into the platform while the application is still there, and then gradually remove the edge device from that point and then put it from the other side using NAT and load balancing rules. So there's various little, it's quite flexible in that regard. So we've got our VPNs, connect to cloud bursting, move your VMs, multiple hybrid cloud. And we've got our SSL VPN. So this is a nice little feature that I've used quite a lot. I've also used it in my home lab at the moment, which is you deploy your NSX Edge, you enable the SSL VPN Plus service, and it gives you a nice little portal. And this portal can be rebranded slightly. You can change the names and the banners on it. And you can have 2 ways into your platform. You can either have a thick client or just a web client. And you can produce, you can put out your workloads like a hotbox or web services. So maybe I've got a website internally I want to give access to. Maybe it's a billing system. Maybe it's just, in my example, I've got a demo which shows my NSX manager. And you can push it across and my users can log into a nice portal. You'll have a login from AD or a local using or Radius or various other things, RSI tokens, and connect into this platform here. There's some constraints. You've got 25 users. You've got 25 users. It's brandable. You can publish your web services. It's per client. So this is a nice little data center in a box access. So perhaps if you're a service provider, if I give you CPU, memory, network, and storage, and give you a portal in, I can build some VMs for you, and you can connect in this nice little web portal, all segregated away from everyone else, but it gives them the feeling that they're well loved, well looked after, and the beauty of this, it can all be automated. So that's the main use cases that we want to talk about today. So we've got the VPN, our load balancing, and HA mode. So a virtual machine, so being a virtual machine, it inherits all the features and constraints of a VM. So it's up to 10 network interfaces. It's scalable, so you've got different form factors. So for example, you can start off with a compact. Maybe if you're going to enable load balancing or different VPN structures, you might want to go to quad size, which is 4 virtual CPUs, 1 gig of RAM. And the more you put through it and the more services you see, the larger it's going to be. Or maybe you'll deploy multiple virtual appliances from the edge, connect them through your apps, and then use the distributed logical router for your east-west traffic and just go up through to the physical with your edge device. So there's all sorts of flexible ways around using this. So you can change the appliance size. So on the bottom left you've got the little GUI which says change the appliance size. If you change it, there will be a short outage. So I've gone through this a few times in the lab, and it will actually make an OVF, switch it through, and then delete it. So you will get a short outage while you do it, even in HA mode. You can scale it upwards. You can go upwards on that and convert it. And then you can amend some of these things that we did in our first demo. When you go through the GUI, you can change the auto rule configuration, download your tech logs, change your CLI credentials for your SSH, and there's the different form factors. So we've got our VPN choices I mentioned. So VPN 1, so SSL VPN. So it presents this brandable portal. So here's a nice little picture of the portal. You can change this banner if you wanted to make it your corporate image, a bit like WordPress if you're a blogger. And then you've got your little vBrownbag that I've clicked on here to show you can change it. And then you can log in here. So very similar to other things in the market like the Barracuda SSL VPN device. But the benefit of this, it's all automated, it's a single pane of glass. And with your vCloud license or your NSX license, it comes with it. Up to 25 users, it's a remote access VPN. So you've got 2 different ways in. Have your users here, you enable your service. Have your portal or your thick client, which you can install it. It supports Linux, Windows, Mac. You've got the web version where you just have your services you want to connect to, or you can install a thick client here, which is showing this virtual adapter like a normal dial-up VPN, and dial up into your platform. So the nice thing here is that you could give to a client, say you're a cloud provider. Here you give every tenant their own edge device. You allocate some external IPs here. You turn the service on for the VPN plus, configure some authentication, maybe it's local as a default, and then a couple of logical networks coming off here, some workloads. User can come in, hit a web page on 443, for example, have a certificate that you've imported, and they go straight in, feeling like a branded data center in a box. So that could be perfect for a Soho deployment, branch office deployment, or the beginning of an admin deployment. So it allows them to get in and start building their apps. Maybe it's like a managed service provider rather than giving them a vCloud GUI. So as a nice little walkthrough of this, I went on to the Handson Lab. Unfortunately, there's no Handson Lab for the SSL VPN that I know of. So I knocked one up using the SDDC Handson Lab, just to give you the images and screenshots of it, to give you something new. So go into your edge device that we've deployed. So you've got Edge 1, Edge 2, our perimeter gateway in the top. Go to our SSL VPN Plus, so you see all our services here. Go into the server settings, give it an IP address that you want to connect to. So here I've given it an internal just to show it. And I created a certificate that I want to connect with. change and customize my portal. You can change the title background, the menu, the logo. So I've just changed it from VMware to vBrownbag to show the example. So here you could do a bit more to it, make it brandable slightly. Click OK on there. Then go to your users. So here I've just selected local, but you could have radius, Active Directory. Here I just put Brownbag, a nice long password, 12 characters or more, Mr. Brownbag. And then configure a resource. So here I've got my web resource. So I'm going to publish my NSX manager. So there's my IP address internally of my NSX manager, which will go through the NSX Edge in SSL VPN service. Enable it. So you've got various other settings in here. You've got you can say prevent multiple logons using the same user, what timeouts they've got, the normal VPN type options. Maybe you want to give the client configuration available, so when they log on the first time it says actually do you want to download the client, so they can do that. Is here, and then shows the packages. And then from a user perspective, they go to their external IP or their DNS name, which is mapped to an external IP, which hits the outbound of your NSX Edge on your SSL VPN mode, which then you'll get a nice little portal, which is like this. So look, it says vBrownbag VCP series for NSX, and your portal login. I type in the username that I've just created, Brownbag, type in my password, and then I get my full access to download my actual data to actually install my client, or I can just click the web app. So here I'm going to download my clients, so I put one on there for Windows or for Mac, so it gives my SSL VPN plus download page. I can click on there and it goes to my downloads folder. I install that later on. Or I can go to my home page and I've got all the applications that are inside my cloud available and secure. So here's my NSX manager going through that platform. Type in my admin password, so you can guess this, admin in VMware 1, and then I go through and I can download my tech support log or restart my NSX manager if there's some slight issues. So I'm downloading my tech support log while I'm off site. So this could be any web app, this could be various applications. You don't want to give out to everybody, you don't want it publicly on the internet. You could pen test your Edge device, have one single point of presence, and then give them a nice little GUI or a nice portal to their applications. That's one nice, it doesn't have to be fancy, it gives them a nice branded area to play with. And then at the end of this, we've got the example here. You click on your setup.exe and you can install the Plus client. So this would give me my IP pool that I can then connect as if I was actually on that network, and I can go onto a box. So it connects in, and my laptop is now directly attached to my cloud platform. So I can RDP nice and safely between my encrypted connection. So the use cases here is you've got your nice NSX Edge here. This is your perimeter gateway. So here in my real life job, I did something very similar with VCNS, and you would be having this pen tested. So I personally had this pen tested by various Crest pen testing firms, and then I had some vulnerability scanning for the applications behind it, have a portal, which is here, have people log in, and I can have my applications coming off. So from a user perspective, I've got a nice area to connect to. I see all my applications as a web GUI. I don't give all my applications out to the outside world, and it's nice and automated and easy to deploy, all from the vSphere admin's point of view through the NSX manager. So that's the SSL VPN. The other choices we've got SitetoSite VPN. So here I've got my headquarters where I build my apps, my edge gateway to my cloud platform or my branch office with another edge gateway. And that has a site-to-site link. So if I've got an application, so for example I have a dongle on the left-hand side, which has got to be presented. So since 4.1 I can have a dongle presented and then have a fully automated DOS with my VMs moving around. As long as they don't power off on the wrong host, my dongle will give out my actual license. And then I can move that across, all here. And then I could have other tiers of my applications. Maybe my back end was in my headquarters where my data lives, because it's quite a lot of data. And then my front end could be here in my cloud platform, where I have publicly accessible DNS names mapped to IP addresses. Well, this is pen tested, this is Qualys scanned, this is Rapid7 scanned for the zero-day vulnerabilities. And this is my web tier here. This could be load balanced by my edge device. And then a back-end link for my VPN. So for VPN, again, you go onto the NSX manager, go into the GUI, enable the service, add one side to be a server, add the other side to be a client, and then enable it, and you get a nice little green tick, and you'll see the session is up. So you can have a broadcast domain here across here with a layer 2, or you could have two separate tiers. And for example, you could have a nice little VDI platform here, have a different gateway, which then says if you want to connect to this subnet, go through this gateway here, and it will go across this tunnel. So some of the things that I came across was that I had different form factors. So for example, I had the quad large platform, which still didn't provide me enough at that point in time. Looking at the stats, it wasn't the VM really, it wasn't the code base, it was the VM with the CPU ready figures. It wasn't getting enough CPU for the encryption. If I move that VM to a host that has got AES-NI, it offloaded the encryption without doing anything else, just powered it on a suitable host with that CPU exposed with vSphere 5.5, and I had the ability to offload my encryption to my CPU, and I got almost line rate for my 1 gig outbound connection between my headquarters and my cloud platform, which allowed me to upload data through a back end. So here I could put my data from here on a hotbox and do an admin share straight to my back end servers here. Then my users would go in from my DNS settings here, DNS to IP on a hostname record, straight onto the edge device, which would then do a NAT rule to different vApps and load balance between them. So a nice little configuration very, very quickly. So for one client, the average deployment time internally was 8 or 9 months. Once this was configured, authorized and scanned and tested, it took literally hours to deploy applications, because once you test it here, you can move them across here without having any problems and any changes. So it gives you some nice flexibility just for the apps. So load balancing allows multiple servers to act as one role for the application. There's 2 modes, 1 ARM and 2 ARM. Depending on the NAT rules applied, you can have source and destination NAT rules. Because of this, you will lose the client IP. But you can have specific VMs. So you have this edge device here doing the firewall role, and then source and destination NAT rules going to this load balancer. It's in the same network as the other web servers, and this role here is specifically for load balancing. There's multiple algorithms supported, so there's hashing, there's round robin, there's least connection. Session persistence, so for example, if I have something like Amazon or a shopping site, I can have my web servers, my little user here, my little matchstick man, hits the server using DNS name, goes to a VIP, gets load balanced and puts to this VM. If then I then hit another one, I need to keep going back to this application, otherwise I will lose my basket and go and buy something else. So there's HA mode for this, so you could potentially separate these things out for applications, have a HA role for each app. So this Edge device has a HA config, which we'll talk about shortly, which means that if this VM goes off, we don't lose all our web servers, it will flip over in a stateful failover, including the session persistence or the sticky sessions across, and remain up. We'll talk about the constraints around the dead time and how that would behave and how does it feel to a user, and that's one of the objectives, is how it feels to a user when the Edge device fails over. So Edge HA, it's an Edge device. There's 2 VMs. It automatically creates anti-affinity rules if it's in a fully automated DRS cluster, which guarantees if this VM goes off, you've got application protection with the 2 stateful persistence here, and physical protection if this goes offline, it will fail over. So you've got an active-passive configuration. By default, it's 1 second keep alive between the 2 nodes. By default, it's a layer 2 internal port group, and the default dead time is 15 seconds. So I know that in various courses I've taught over the last few months, a few network people will go, 15 seconds is a massive amount of time. It's a lifetime, I think one person actually said. But really, if you look at it from the point of view as this is per application, can applications take a 15-second outage? Well, you can drop it down to 6 seconds in the config, which I show in my demo, and it will fail over. Things like VPNs and load balancing will fail over with it. So the user shouldn't notice too much. The service should be back up and running pretty quickly. So depending on the use case and the application, and for the ease of use and the automation that goes along with it, is a pretty nifty piece of kit. So here's a little demo. So we're going to configure HA. So we've got my NSX Edge that I built earlier. Go to network and security. Go to my firewall, my NSX Edge into my firewall, my vBrownbag demo. Double click on that. Go to my web client, my thick client here, and show you my little Brownbag demo there. It's sitting there on its own. It's in a management cluster. With DRS rules not configured. So it's fully automated DRS, but no anti-affinity or affinity rules. So anti-affinity, keep them both off the same host at the same time. So no single point of failure from the physical point of view. And I'll ping my interface of my current Edge device. So it's pinging away there. And we'll see if there's any packet loss as we go through the process. So here we're going to enable HA mode. So what's going to happen in the background, we're going to go into the configuration, our HA configuration here, change. We've got our status, our VNIC, and our dead time is 15 seconds currently. So we can change that down to 6. If you try any lower, it will error out. Try 6, click OK. And if you go back to the vSphere client, you'll see this deployment OVF template is going very crazy. So you'll see vBrownbag demo -0 and -1, and 1 starts to power on. So that now will have a stateful sync between the 2 NSX Edge devices. And you see there was no packet loss during that time period. So just deployed it. Go to my Edge cluster. Again, go to my edit settings and see my affinity rules. and you can see in the rule base it will make the anti-affinity rules for the edge, and it shows vBrownbag demo 0 N01, and separate these virtual machines, so keep them on 2 hosts, never put them on the same host. So now just a quick test of the HA mode. I've got my 2 VMs both showing these interfaces that I've configured within my GUI and my NSX manager. Go to my command prompt, do a continuous ping. So that's working quite well. And then I'm just going to power off the main one. Let's just power off. So here the power is going to be powered off. It's going to say, are you sure, are you crazy? Yes, I'm crazy. Off it goes. And then go back to our ping, and we can see that gradually it will go, it's off. Applications offline. It's not working. Lights are out. People panicking, and so on. And then it will gradually pop back up. So here, it popped back up. And then we have the second box taking over for the role. Then the common question that people have is that what happens if you power the other box back on? Well, that now becomes the passive node. So to prove this, you power this back on. You'll see no change in the service. Power that off again, and you'll still see no change in the service because that is the passive node. You're just changing its mitigation path. It's just saying no, you haven't got any redundancy. Yep. So there's only loss during that point when we failed. So here I've got my ping test again. I'm going to power off the previous active, which should be now passive. Power it off, and you shouldn't have any loss of packets. So it showed that it's switched roles over, it's got in sync, and now they're actively serving configuration that I placed inside my NSX manager and pushed it directly to my edge device. So these are the kind of things that you'll get asked about in the VCP-NV. What's the default dead time? What can you move it to? What does that actually mean? What's the actual time it's declared dead and fail over between the 2 active sites? There's active passive configuration. The management plane for the NSX manager is pushed directly into the edge device, which is an OVF, which then gets produced on 2 different hubs. You can see here that the second one was actually failed over and took the role. So that's HA mode. So bringing you to tips for the exam, what I'd recommend you do is there's a Handson Lab. So things that we've spoken about. There's no SSL VPN Plus demo, but you can pretty much configure it within the Handson Lab 1425, which is the VMware NSX Advanced one. It's a 6.1 version, but you've got the L2 VPN and DHCP relay labs, which are extremely useful for the exam. There's a new design guide which has been created to 2.1. That's pretty much essential reading for any of the NSX exams. It goes through in great detail through it all, because at the moment you can't download a copy of NSX unless you're a partner or got another relationship with VMware. So at the moment you have to make do with the Handson Labs, and to be honest, you can just jump on and do a bit. So understand when to use each feature. So for example, if I've got 10 users who I want to present an application to them for a short project in a cloud platform, I can move my apps. I can copy an OVF, a standard OVF, place it into my application area, power it on, configure a NAT rule, configure load balancing, or configure a NAT rule and then give them an SSL VPN through an edge, present them as a web resource, and it's all protected by the edge. So for example, in my use case, here's my public facing area with my edge device, and as long as this edge device is being pen tested and secure, everything beneath it is part of that security zone. So I can have different rules and different DNS names for this, present them, and the edge device gives me the NAT rules, the virtualware firewall, the DHCP relay. So with DHCP relay, here's showing a nice summary. I've got build my apps on the left, move them across from a site-to-site VPN. DNS, I can have my corporate DNS in a protected zone and have it only the edge gateway talking to it. So I can protect it through that, only through DHCP and DNS. So I can keep my corporate area private. I can have a firewall rules coming in, presenting my applications, only on say port 443. Have a NAT rule going to an internal IP address, so then maybe I have my same build my applications here, migrate them across without changing the IP range, which means regression testing and things can be minimal because we know it's just a copy of the files rather than having to change everything. And you've got hidden little web.config files with various little IPs that could cause all sorts of problems, so we can mitigate against that. Have a site-to-site VPN to maybe onboard people. Offload the encryption to your physical hosts. So remember, all I did was I changed it from an older HP kit to a newer DL380 with that Intel offload feature, and the thing just flew. And there was no difference in the configuration. You just power it on, and it takes advantage to the extensions provided by the hypervisor, showing that the CPU can take that resource. And then we've got our VPN Plus for our portal to log in. Our admins can log in and control our system. Our users can come in from this side, hitting our edge device with our load balancing. And we can have our site-to-site connections here. So all from one little device, all from a VM. Again, if you think a VM is going to cause some issues with throughput, there's a nice little bit within the NSX documentation that says what form factor to use for how many connections, what type of service, so load balance, what's it rated as. So you can do that on the fly and increase it. You can have a HA mode. So with HA, you're making sure that a VM that supplies your data plane for your workloads to your users is on one host, and a application consistent but on a different host active passive configuration for your edge gateway is on another host with automatic DRS rules. So things for the exam, the controllers, the NSX controllers for your Mac ARP and VTEP tables within your VXLAN Mac Learning, that and programming your VIBs, that does not have DRS rules automatically created. You have to select them yourself, but it distributes the load of those tables across in a slicing manner. The control VM for your distributed logical router, that is in the HA mode for your routing and your programming of your lifts, but that also has anti-affinity rules. And the NSX Edge in HA config mode also has automatic DRS rules enabled. So just little things like that you need to be aware of, little questions that could catch you out. I'd also recommend going through the Handson Lab, so each of the GUIs, know each of the services. So all the services I mentioned today, you go to your edge device, know how to deploy it. So you got your deploy, so you're filling in the information for your OVF, which will then deploy it to where you've selected on your cluster. Then at that point you'll have a tab for VPN, a tab for load balancing, for firewall, for VPN Plus, etc. And these are all services. So the general flow is you enable a service, you have the global config, fill that in, add in the interfaces, and then push the config. And by pushing the config, you're going from your data flow, which is the NSX manager, directly to your edge device with my data plane on the VNIC and a separate control plane to my controllers with my Mac, ARP and VTech tables. A couple of things that I found: you've got two options. You've got one which is resync, and one for redeploy. You will get slight outages of this, but if you've got problems with any issues within your Edge gateway, you can push the config back again to the Edge device. That normally brings them back into service quite well. So if things are not working perfectly, you can schedule that as a temporary maintenance window. So there are some constraints around it, but if you remember, it's from an application perspective. I know that generally I work within a 24/7 business that I'm working with now. If I said I wanted the whole platform to be offline for a few minutes or even a few seconds, I'd be told quite politely that'd be a no. But if I said if one application can go down at 4 AM and for the immediate deployment of a VM, which is quite easy to copy, easy to back up, it's all in the NSX manager. You copy that database, you've got a copy of all the config for your Edge gateway. So exam-wise, know each feature, know the data flow, know simple troubleshooting, know how to configure each of the features, know about the VPN plus, HA mode, what's the default time, how to flip them between them, what's the restrictions around it. It has a layer 2 port between them by default. You can change that depending on what interface you use. So any questions? We're coming up to probably the end of this now. So any questions? We've covered the majority of Objective 6, how it slots in. Hopefully that's been useful.
Yeah, it has. So it looks like there's no questions so far.
Excellent.
I would have one remark. You can actually do the SSL VPN stuff in the Handson Labs as well. It is lab 1403.
Oh, it is that one, is it? Okay, excellent.
Yeah, in section 5, directly the first task is to configure SSL VPN.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, I haven't seen that one for a while, so I made one up in my demo, so that saved that. I think that would have saved me some time. Anyway.
Yep. But
cool.
Thank you again for presenting.
No worries
again
at all.
as well.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Always. For next week, we have a VCDX Q&A panel planned. Hopefully Chris Colati, Carl Childs, Rennie van den Bedem, I hope I didn't butcher his name now, Simon Long and Rob Nolan will be presenting. So that should be a very interesting vBrownbag.
That should be very interesting for our VCDX journey, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yes.
So yeah, thanks again for presenting, and for all who are attending, have a good night, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. See you next week.
Thank you very much. Cheers.